It's another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. But are you subscribed? If not, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Spread the word about the Christian Reeve Podcast and enjoy this episode. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is a singer, songwriter, actor, music label owner. He does it all the way from New Jersey in the USA. His name is Collin Roach. Welcome to the show, Collin. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. I was very interested in this because this is the first time that I've actually gone through someone's agent to actually go through to the interview. So it's interesting because your agent reached out to me. And then here's the crazy thing. So as I understand this correctly, you own the label and you've signed yourself on the label. So the agent is representing you, but they also work for you. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's really cool. Let's talk about that real quick. So yeah, the label is known as Y.E.S Squad, or it's an abbreviation that's short for Young Entertainment Super Squad. So why did you choose to set up this label? How's it going? And what do you ultimately sort of hope to achieve with it?
Well, when I was like 16 years old, I kind of came up with the idea for it. And that pretty much started off as like, okay, I want to make this like entertainment label across the board. So I don't want it to just be music. I want to have social media people, kind of just like something that no one's ever done before. Like we've seen a few things here and there. Obviously, there's tons of music labels out there. Obviously now with the growth of TikTok and then also some YouTubers, you see like different YouTube labels and stuff like that. But I really wanted to do something that no one's ever done before. And so I tried to build that up and make an entertainment label from there. And then I was young. I was like 16, 17. I didn't really know what I was doing. I'm only 19 now, so I'm only 2 years older. But now I kind of know a little bit more. I'm more in the industry. So about a year and a half ago, 2 years, I really started focusing on the music label aspect of it. So right now, it's pretty much just it's really just a music label. I'm working on building it farther, having it also be like a modeling label or / agency and like different things like that. So I'm really just trying to build it as far as I can get it. Right now, it's just a music label with me and two of my artists and a band that we all have signed right now. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. No, props to you. I think it's a good move, especially with what you were saying about obviously the popularity of websites like TikTok. Like even myself, I'm a 27-year-old man, and for a long time I was like, I don't have any business on this website. And then you see people my age, older than I am, doing really well, sort of good on these platforms, and it kind of makes you realize that really it's no longer a generational thing. It's just like this is the type of format now. This is how you kind of set up, I suppose, an online persona. But the trouble is, a lot of these people are just managing themselves, and it does get to a point where you do kind of need some representation. Like I know for myself, okay, I'm nowhere near being some big sort of content creator, but I've already seen that when I look at all of my work, like I need help right now for sure, because I just don't have enough time. And I can see that like the more you do, the more popular you get, typically the less time you have. So I think it makes sense to have some sort of a label that represents all of that. And I think possibly the thing that makes your label different versus anything else is that kind of fact that it is multi-content as opposed to just one thing. Because I don't know, like when I was looking through this, I suppose let's call it resume. When I was looking through all of your your information and stuff, it kind of made me realize that a lot of people in your generation and my generation don't really tend to stick to like one thing anymore. It used to be, you meet someone in a conversation, you go, well, what do you do? Like, what's your profession? And yeah, there are people that do sort of commit to one sort of avenue, but a lot of the time that's not the case. Like, I think for me years ago, working with kind of creative things, like it all started with music, but then I don't know, when I started acting, I was like, oh, this is kind of similar to the feeling of performing on stage, but it's different somehow. It kind of gives you almost more creativity in a sense.
Yeah, I see the same thing. Like right now with my career, it's like when people ask me, they're like, "Whoa, what are you?" I don't even know what to say because it's like, yes, I'm an actor, but I fell in love with music when I was 3 years old. I've been making music ever since. I've only been producing and professionally releasing music for about 2 years now. I'm just releasing my own first single this Friday. So it's like, am I an actor? Am I a music artist? What do I do here? So I just kind of say entertainer, really.
Before we get to your single, because we will talk about that. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'll either say entertainer or multi-content creator. That seems to be quite all-encompassing. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's weird because sometimes when I do live streams and people ask me like, "Well, what do you do?" I'm like, whew, and then I begin this long list of things that I do, and it's not a flex or me trying to show off. No, it's just genuinely like, how do you sum this up in a way where it doesn't? Okay, you're not underselling yourself. That's the key.
Yeah.
Because if you miss one thing, like I've done it before, like sometimes I don't mention acting, and okay, I'm not professional, but it is a big part of what I do. You know, I've had some voice acting gigs, for example. I've done some independent stuff. So there is an argument for it. And that's what I always base my opinion on, is like, have I got paid for it? If I've got paid for it, I can consider myself at least working in that field. But anyway.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like the thing. It's you don't want to undersell yourself, but then at the same time, it feels like once you start going through that laundry list, it's like some people may interpret it as, oh, he's just bragging and upselling himself. But it's like, no, I just do a lot.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing as well, because it's like, if you don't talk about yourself, then just no one knows about you.
Yeah.
And it's such a big part of, you know, like you said, you know, your label's focused on including that social media angle and stuff like that, and it's so important. I mean, marketing in general, if you're trying to grow a brand, you need to be able to sell yourself. You need to be a salesman, a creative, as far as like artistic things are concerned, you know, like how the brand looks and stuff. And then how you talk to people, how you discuss things with people. You know, like one of the things I'm surprised by sometimes is, and it's not really that surprising, but I guess it makes sense, it's like every time I have a guest on this show, they never know what to expect. And it's like, I understand that, because it's like, you don't necessarily have the time to go and check out what I do, right? But you know, I've been on some podcasts where it's been very relaxed, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know, I naturally like to make mine a bit more professional, because I'm sort of going for a particular thing with this. And I always notice this like little kind of like, oh, okay, that's surprising. Wasn't expecting that. And it's like, but that's the thing. Like when you put forward a particular brand and style, you've got to kind of, I feel, operate in the same manner all the time. So what I mean by that is, you know, if I'm reaching out to you by email or on social media, I'm professional the whole way through. You know, I'm not gonna be like, hey pal, how's it going? Want to have a chat? Like, I just don't feel like that really fits. And it's a bit.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And like, especially with when I first started off my label, and even now, a lot of the people that work with me, and even some of the artists, we all started off as friends first before anything. And so now, even if I'm talking to them about like music stuff, or if I'm like, hey, like I have this artist, like you should try and do a feature with them, like I'll email, like literally one of the artists that signed lives about 5 houses away from me. They're one of my best friends. And if I talk to them about music, it's complete like email, professional, everything like that. And especially with, even in my career, like I'm not anything really yet. I'm trying to be. And so it's like, it's very easy for me. And I feel like what helps me out a lot is, a lot of times, like when you try and make contacts and you try and talk to people, some people just be like, hey bro, like I have this song. Or you could do it the professional way. And I feel like that gets you a few steps farther when you do it that way.
It puts me off, I'll be honest. Like I get people reach out to me quite often, and you know, I think the whole thing about, because I learned this, okay, I'll explain briefly about my background. So, you know, studied at university, marketing, business background, marketing, basically. And one of the things I learned right off the bat is, when you're reaching out to businesses, you get 1 million emails a day. And most of that you can't be bothered to look at, because there's 1 million emails a day. So if someone is like just sending you that bog standard kind of template stuff, you're not going to read that. And equally on the other end of the spectrum, if it's way too informal, or just, I don't know, there's no kind of personal touch there, it's just like, oh, hey, would you be interested in collaborating, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, like I'm a busy guy, and I don't think it's that unreasonable to expect people to be professional and to take, because here's the way I look at it, right? You're dealing with someone's time, and time you don't get back. So you should respect people's time. You should not waste their time. You know, it's one of the reasons I take this so seriously. I mean, it's, you know, I look at it as a way of, you know, it is a collab. It is a way of promoting the person. It's a way of obviously helping me as well by gauging your audience and so on. You know, let's be transparent. But at the same time, you know, it should be an enjoyable experience. It should be interesting to the listener, and it should be done in a professional way. I don't know, like, I just feel like if you don't do that, you're missing out on something. You're kind of cheating people a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, like I don't know, like with people, I've talked to some people too, and they're like, oh well, I just want to have fun. It's like, I love doing this. I just want to have fun. And I'm like, that's all fine and good. It's like, if you want to have fun and you truly love doing this, you can do it professional and still have fun with it. And honestly, the more professional you are when it comes to interactions, the more you'll get the opportunity to do it.
I think this is why I like podcasting, because it's long form. Like, I've seen a lot of interview. Like, funnily enough, I was watching something earlier, and this guy was reacting to bad interviews, right? And the whole thing that was going through my head that time is like, man, if I had like that person on my show, I'd have all these different questions to ask them. But this idiot asked them something inappropriate or something silly. And you can just sometimes, like, I see I don't know, you get someone like, I don't know, Billie Eilish or something. She'd be sitting there and you could just see the disappointment.
Yeah.
Like, they don't say nothing. And it's probably her PR officer going, hey, you know what? Just keep it professional. Don't, you know, because you do always have to think about that. You can't kind of go rogue and get annoyed, because then that'll be all over the, you know, and that's something you got to consider. But at the same time, it's like, how can you not be aggravated? You know, like, there's one particular one, and this will be the final story before we get back to business. There was a Cara Delevingne, got her name right, interview. It's a very famous one where she's just, very disappointed. And the hosts are acting like she's the problem. And they even go as far as to say, oh, you know, maybe you should go get yourself a Red Bull and change that attitude. And you're just sitting there like, oh.
Yeah, I watch a lot of interviews like that, because also I'm like I said before, like, I'm still very new in this space and I'm still learning every single day that I move forward. So I like watch interviews and stuff, especially now as I'm kind of like on this like press run, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, I watch other interviews. I try and learn like both ways, like how to act and what to learn. And so I watch interviews like that. And sometimes you're like, wow, some interviewers just don't know what they're working with. And then some people that are being interviewed just are horrible at it. It's like,
I mean, what I will say in defense of interviewees is that I think it totally goes up to the podcaster. You know, I've had all sorts of guests on my show. I've had very extroverted, very introverted. I think the host has to take a different role. So if you meet someone that's very chatty, you take a side seat. You just guide the conversation. If you get someone who's a bit quiet, then you need to focus on asking the right questions. You need to ignite that, because everyone has something to offer. Like, I don't believe in this concept of a bad guest. I mean, I think that if someone comes on with a bad attitude and doesn't want to answer anything and is deliberately doing that, then okay, fair enough. But like, how many times has that realistically ever happened? You know, a lot of the time it's like they don't feel comfortable. Like, you get someone, I don't know, let's say like one of those like Tonight shows, because in a couple of years you're going to be on one of those. So just bear this in mind. You know, you get one of those insufferable hosts like Jimmy Fallon or something. You know the drill. It's an entertainment thing. He asks you maybe 3 or 4 serious questions, and the rest is just banter, and you have a laugh, right? But at the same time, if you go in there with a bad attitude and you take yourself way too seriously, I think that's where you get caught out, because it's like, you need to know what to expect. Like, if you go like Larry King when he was alive, if you go on that show, that's going to be a very serious interview. There's not going to be any messing around. But on like a Jimmy Fallon show, it's just going to be a laugh. So just take it for what it is. But I think sometimes guests that come on, and I understand, it's like, you know, you mentioned that you're on a press run right now. As you get more famous and more serious in the industry, you're going to be doing a lot. You'll probably be doing like, I don't know, 50 to 100 interviews in a day, and you'll be knackered. So like, maybe I can understand the slight aggravation, but at the same time, I think we always have to remember, like, if you are a famous person, you're on camera. Like, you gotta kind of keep that in mind. And like, I don't know, if it were me, I think I'd just load myself up on coffee and just, you know, just.
And it's also too, I feel like some people have to just really sit back and just remember, what am I doing this for?
Yeah.
Like when you're on the press run and stuff like that, and you're going from place to place to place, you have to remember you're doing that in order to help yourself. And that's putting yourself out there and gaining attraction and fans that you probably weren't going to have before. I was actually just having this conversation in the car like 2 days ago with my mom. We were sitting in the car. I think it was with my mom, and it was like, yeah, like when you watch like interviews and stuff, and you watch the people do like the Wired autocomplete interviews and then the GQ interviews, and you go through them, like a lot of times if you look, that person is wearing the same exact clothes, and they've just had a straight day of going through all of those interviews at once.
Yeah, and they know what's up. Like I'd imagine that when you have to do those days, I mean, I think if I was a PR manager for someone, I'd give them the next day off, make sure they do nothing as a rest day, but sort of prime them, hey, for the next 10 hours, maybe more, you're going to be doing straight interviews. So just bear that in mind. And this is all on camera. So if you say anything, make sure it's positive. But at the same time, you know what, like, again, on the defense of the interviewees, particularly those ones where it's round on round, like from what I understand, particularly on movie ones and stuff, you sit down and you're in a room and then like 50 or so different interviewers come in one after the other. So you're going to get asked a lot of similar questions. So I think as an interviewer, you need to keep that in mind and try to think about, well, what have people not likely to have asked them? What stuff that's going to ignite a discussion, a conversation? And yeah, obviously not having an agenda. That's one of the things I always aim to do with this show. Is it's like I want to give people a platform to promote themselves. I want to have fun discussions. I want people to walk away and go, do you know what, I had a good time, and also to kind of feel like they got something out of it for everyone involved. And sometimes people come on the show and like for instance the bit before, like viewers won't know this, so I'll explain this, and my listeners, I always do a little thing before the show starts where I ask the guest if they have any questions, anything off limits, whatever, because I want the guest to feel 100% comfortable. And the reason I kind of do that as well is to sort of say, hey, there's no agenda here, this is exactly how it is. It's because I accept that not everyone has the time to check out the show because they're busy, like doing stuff, which I really appreciate. It's like with me, people will go like, oh, hey, check this thing out, and it's like, if I got time, and that's not meant to be rude, it's the truth. But, and this is a good segue, bringing it back to you, I was able to listen to your music, and I actually got to hear the upcoming track before it was released, so I feel very special. But here's an interesting thing. So you were or are a rapper.
Yeah.
And you've got a bit of a different kind of style going on here right now, because your old stuff is straight rapping, but then this new single that's dropped, it's more kind of like rock oriented. Like I was sitting there listening to it, I was like, oh, this is like Taking Back Sunday or something. I'm loving this.
Here's the thing, I'm so all over the place when it comes to my music, like even just what I make and what I listen to. I feel like growing up with, and it was like, it depended on what car I was in. If I was going somewhere with my mom, it was like Biggie, 50 Cent, like Joe Budden, like rap music. But then my dad, who also is very into instruments, and he plays guitar, he plays pretty much every instrument there is.
Oh, cool.
And I was in the car with him, it was more like rock and like jazz. And so I feel like just growing up, I was introduced to so many different types of music. As I got older, like I learned, because I feel like for me, I learned more of how to create music through hip hop. I learned more of producing. And so that's kind of where I started off. But I had all these loves for all these other styles of music. Like I started kind of working with that more so and going farther ahead with those. And so that's pretty much like where I am now. Like the last couple of things that I've worked on have kind of been like a real 50-50 split between like rock, pop, and like rap at all in one. So I don't even know if I would consider myself like a rapper at this point or what, just because I have so many different lanes that I go through.
Well, this is interesting. So do you think you're kind of, okay, what's the best way to phrase this question? It's clear that this is an experimentation phase, but it's interesting. Like you said, you've been in the game for 2 years. You put out this more rock orientated stuff, and you say, well, I'm not sure I consider myself a rapper anymore. But you're not saying I will never do rap ever again. What you're saying is we're figuring this stuff out right now.
Yeah.
We're seeing where it goes. So this single is more rock orientated, but it's probably going to come either on an EP or an extended play. What are we talking? Is it going to be an album?
Yeah, pretty much farther down the line, kind of working on one right now. Haven't really gotten that much through with it yet, but even like with that, I feel like right now what I'm working on is more of a concept album, honestly. So like right now, this is just like one piece of like the full story from like obviously with just the many lanes that I'm in, and even being an actor, and like I kind of say writer almost, but not really. I haven't made anything that's been produced, written like script wise, but it kind of, I was like, what if we told a movie through songs, so front to back? It's so this is just one piece of like the small story, but with each song too, I also try and make it so that even if you just hear that one song, that is interesting, and it's not just like a, well, this makes no sense. So
reminds me a lot of this band. Wow, they've been around forever. There's this metal band called Dream Theater. It's like a progressive metal band, and they very famously over the years have had albums which do the exact same thing. And I was introduced to them when I was growing up. I think I was a bit younger than you are now, and it blew me away, this concept of having an album which does exactly what you just said. So if you listen to it out of context, just a great song. If you put it together, it tells a story. And they would do bookends, so like one album leads into the next, and I don't know, I think it's like it's more inclusive, isn't it? It's like it kind of makes you feel, if you're a fan, it makes you feel like you're part of something special, you know. And I think it's a natural thing to do with music, because music is storytelling. Fundamentally, you're telling a story of a feeling, an emotion, a thought, a place, a memory, whatever. So this is just taking it one step further and applying like a more, well, I suppose long-term storytelling, a bigger thing.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I was just kind of basically just like what we're slightly talking about before. Like it's a mix too of like both like rap and rock, and it's pretty much got like everything involved in it too. And it's really just kind of, I was creating this also, I wanted to challenge myself. Usually how I've worked before was, all right, I write this song, record it, mix it, master it in the house, done, get it out there. With this, I came up with the idea of, so basically on my phone and on paper, I have every single song that is going to be at least started off in the story. I have it written down already. It's just titles. Some of them aren't even written yet. Some just have instrumentals, but I have the whole idea. And basically I kind of go through, each song is pretty much almost like a scene, if you will. And like with each one, I'm like, okay, I want to talk about this and have this part be plugged into it. And so if it fits more of a hip hop sound, if it's more hip hop sound, if it's like rock, then it's that. And what I've been doing a lot now is I used to do everything from my house, and I don't have like a home studio, but I have pretty much everything I need to get a good sound out of like the house basically. But what I've been doing lately is just I record the demos at my house, and then I bring it to the studio, and then we record it all there. So it kind of it's more of a step in evolution as well, and getting everything more connected.
I got to say, the interesting thing for me about this is that your generation and my generation, and that sounds so weird me saying that because I don't feel that old, but there is a generational divide. But it's fascinating to me because when I was growing up, you know, I grew up with rock and metal. I loved hip hop and everything else. And I also just say on a side note, I think when you become a musician, you just learn to love everything. I mean, you said yourself, you grew up in a family of musicians. You just learn to appreciate everything, and you realize like it's not that dissimilar. It's just different interpretations of the same thing, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, like I always kind of saw things like pop, hip hop as like within their own kind of spheres. So like if I went and listened to hip hop, you know, I had a certain feeling. If I went to listen to metal, I had a certain feeling and interpretation. And to some extent, I still feel that way. And bringing it to the point, now I'm starting to hear musicians that grew up in the same, either in the same kind of generation as me or in your generation, who kind of heard all of that. So like pop, punk, rock, hip hop, and love it all. And shout out to Ugly Boy Click. So that's one of the guests I had on my show recently. And they do something like that, where it's kind of punk rap. I don't know. I still don't understand their sounds. Sorry, guys. But it's fascinating because it blends all of those things and it puts them together. and it's like almost like a whole new genre in a sense. And I
Yeah,
feel
I
like
think,
right now there's like a great deal of experimentation in general. Like even with things like rap, you've got like trap, which has become such a big thing now. And it's,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was already starting when I was growing up, but now it's like become mainstream. And that's the fascinating thing.
Yeah, I think it's awesome the way that music is kind of evolving. I feel like there's different ways to look at it, and it really just all depends on how you look at it. Like I know a lot of times there's these rappers and stuff that kind of made like popped up and became big in like the 90s or early 2000s that absolutely hate the direction that hip hop's going. And it's like I understand what they're saying, but I feel like when you look at it, you still have solid hip hop artists, and now you also have like these trap artists too. And it's like if you box them together and make them one big thing, then I understand where there's a disconnect. But I just feel like overall it's becoming to a point where hip hop is like the hold of like 8,000 subgenres.
It's exciting. I don't understand those classic rappers. You know, I've even heard people like Snoop Dogg say like, "Oh, it's all trash." I don't get it. It's just evolution. It
Yeah,
happens in every single genre. It's I don't know. I mean, for me, yeah, the best days in rap will always be 90s and 80s, 90s, 2000s, but that's just my personal view. I still hear stuff today that's new, that's fire, and I'm like, "Oh, this hits hard." But it is a generational thing. You know, whatever you grow up with, you look through with rose tinted glasses. You know what I mean? Whether or not
yeah.
it's actually better or not is, I mean, what, music's subjective anyway. But I think there's certainly more experimentation now than there ever was before. I mean, I remember the days when I can't even speak properly now. I do apologize. Rap and rock together was considered like a big thing, whereas
Yeah.
these days it's not. But like, you know, it's just the progression of all things. And I don't know, man. I think that's just maybe it's an out of touch thing. I don't know. I mean, you notice certain people. I said this only the other day on another podcast episode that I think it was Gene Simmons who's always like saying stuff about like how he hates how where's rock has gone, and it's like, dude, things change. I mean, imagine how crap it would be if like all music would just remain the same for like 10, 15 years. I mean,
I feel like it's pretty much no matter what happens, I feel like people are going to end up hating it then, because if music remained the same up until this point, bands like Motley Crue, Kiss, and like all those, they'd be like, oh, we started that. We're the first ones to do that. They're just copying us. And then something original pops up, and then people are like, oh, what they're doing is horrible. What we did was what was the best.
I think a big thing is with this as well is that like music is very reminiscent of its time. So like if you listen to 80s music, I mean, I don't know, for me, I kind of discovered it through playing like GTA Vice City. That for me, shout out. But like, I don't know, it feels like a vibe. It kind of transports you. If you go watch 80s movies, you get an idea of what it was like
Yeah,
to live in
it's
that time.
absolutely about like the time. Like even you can plug any song in to its time period of like a movie or even like a video, and you can be like, okay, that was what this time was like.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I feel
Like
it's no different now.
yeah,
It's,
like
you
I
know,
feel like the best example is like when you like take any video from like the inner cities in California in the 90s and plug an NWA song in, and you're
yeah.
like, that's what they were doing then. That's what that time was like. Or even you take like you put a motorcycle on the street and just
Mhm.
take a video of that from like the 80s, 90s, throw a Motley Crue song in, you're like, that was that time. That's Kickstart My Heart. That's Dr. Feelgood, all that.
Amazing stuff. Right, let's bring it back to you. So this single you've got dropping out, for everyone listening right now, this will be dropping tomorrow. So as I understand, your single is dropping on the 26th. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what's the name of the title of the
It's
song?
called Cutthroat Insomniac.
Cutthroat Insomniac. Please, everyone listening, go check that out when it does drop. Where can they listen to the track?
On all streaming platforms wherever they decide to listen to music.
And can they find it via your name, Collin Roach, or is it under a different
No,
name?
it's under my name, Collin Roach. Yeah.
Cool, awesome. I'm going to be adding that to my Spotify. That's good stuff. Good stuff.
Awesome.
So yeah, so on the 26th, make sure you go stream. That's an excellent song. Like I said, very, very reminiscent of those 2000s kind of alternative rock bands. It was a breath of fresh air because I don't know what I expected, but you know, every time I listen to musicians that I have on the show, it's always fun, and I often end up just putting it in my Spotify because it's like, yeah, good stuff. So here's an interesting question. What's your kind of songwriting process like? Because I feel like every songwriter I've had on the show, myself included, we all have different approaches, different ways, different sources of inspiration. But what's yours?
Mine's honestly very interesting because when it comes to my songs, I usually produce them all myself too. And so they all start off like in my room, and I used to just be like, okay, I feel like working on music right now. But as of recently, it's been like, if it comes to me, I wait for it to kind of hit me first. And if I get it, then I'm like, all right, let's lay this part of the instrumental, and let's do this part. And I kind of work that out. And then honestly, most recently, I've kind of found myself not really writing lyrics as much as I am kind of coming up with them in my head. Like a lot of times, my choruses and my hooks and all that now, those, I don't usually write them down anymore. That's kind of like, all right, I like think of like this one part and I kind of roll with it through there until I'm like ready to go up to the mic and record it. So my songwriting process is kind of just, I start off with the instrumental, and then from there I go into like the hooks, the lyrics. And then once I get the lyrics done, then I'm like straight to recording. I used to really come up with the lyrics first. Like I used to hear a song and then I was like, oh, this song is sick. Let me write this lyric. If I was on this song, I'd say this, and this. And then I'd be like, okay, now let me make a beat that's not similar, but like the same BPM at least. So then you have the same like delivery. But then I kind of found myself almost, I wouldn't say copying artists, but every song I listened to, I was like, that sounds just like this. So now I'm really kind of stepping into like my own, where everything's pretty much like an original sound for me, basically.
It's tricky not to do that. I mean, I remember listening to, I think it was an Avenged Sevenfold record one time, and I remember thinking like, oh, this sounds a lot like, I don't know, Pantera or something. And then I read the interviews that they made, and they were like, yeah, you know, at the time we were listening to a lot of Pantera. And it's like, I like the transparency. It's like, it's okay to be inspired by things. That's just how music works. And I don't think music is ever really truly original. It's always inspired by something before it. But it's, you know, obviously you want to do like your own take or your own interpretation, and that's what makes it unique and different and such.
Yeah, but when I was working on this, I kind of like what I was always like when I was telling people like about it, when I was like first working on it, I was like, it's kind of like if, and no way am I saying like, oh, this is as good as Nirvana, but like I was like Nirvana guitar was in modern day music. I was like, that with like Billy Joe Armstrong angst almost in the vocals.
It's interesting to me. I do wonder about this. Like, if Nirvana had emerged like now, would they be as successful? And I think in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. It's a very interesting industry now, the music industry. It's changed so much. And I mean, even just the way that you become famous now. Like, I hear so many musicians that deserve so much more credit than they have right now. And then I see people in the charts that, all right, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm less kind of, I think when I was growing up, I used to be a bit more like, how can you listen to this garbage in the charts and then tell me that what I listen to is bad? But like, I don't know, maybe that's just 2000s British pop, but but there was American stuff that weren't great either. But like now, when I listen to most stuff in the charts, I feel like the quality is much better, the songwriting is much better. I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. I feel like that's because nowadays it's like anyone has the opportunity to release their music for everyone to hear. Like, it wasn't until recently that was even possible. It used to be, oh, if you want anyone to hear your music, you either need to like sleep outside of like the radio station headquarters and wait for them to walk in and hand them your CD, or like you gotta, or no one's gonna even hear your song until you've officially like made it. Now people have the opportunity. You make a song, you think it's good, even if you don't think it's good, you can put it on SoundCloud, put it on YouTube. And especially now, it's like even anyone has the ability to just put their songs on like Spotify, Apple Music, all that. And so I feel like with that, especially now with TikTok, any song has the chance to be discovered now.
TikTok's been a great tool, especially for me. Like I've found so many songs on there that are totally my vibe. And I feel like I don't know for sure that this happens, but I would wager it probably does. It seems to know or guess your kind of taste in music, because I hear a lot of like indie stuff on there and like rap stuff that I like, and it's like, okay, so I think they're kind of doing exactly what every other platform is doing, like gathering information and data on you, but then kind of recommending stuff that you would like. And I'm like, yes, I absolutely like this, and it's great.
For me, when I first, like my first like introduction to TikTok, if that makes sense, was my girlfriend had TikTok, and I'd like see the TikTok she was watching. I was like, why do you enjoy this app? Like, I don't like any of this. But then I like got on TikTok and I started like watching TikToks and stuff. And eventually, like you were saying, it builds like your For You page where it's like what you actually like. And I was like, oh my God, like I love this.
Yeah, no, it for real. Yeah. I mean, I think everyone goes through that stage. Like I set up a TikTok last year, did it for like 3 or 4 months, had some mild fun with it, some interest here and there. And then I just thought, probably too old for this, or it's silly. So I gave it up. And then I started it recently, and it's been doing really, really well. And I've been actually kind of playing the game a little bit more. So I use music on there. I kind of have fun with the things that you normally do. I don't know how to put it, like the trends and stuff, right? And one big thing that I do that tends to do well is like skits and stuff. So basically like Vine, but sometimes with the music, sometimes not. And I don't know, I think TikTok is kind of a breath of fresh air because it blends music with everything really well. It inspires people. There are no kind of rules. You can do like pretty much anything, and you can get big on there pretty easily and pretty quickly.
And I think that's such a great thing, but also such a hurtful thing for those people that are getting big at the same time. Because I'm not going to say somebody's name, but there was a TikToker who has like a couple million followers.
Right.
She doesn't have any management team or anything like that. She's just big on her own right. And we reached out to her for promotion for not one of my songs, but one of the artists I work with. And the price she gave was way too low. And obviously you're like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, I'm going to jump on that. But
So, do you say the price?
The price she gave for her promotion was, and like her rates were extremely low.
Yeah.
For the amount of followers she has. And it's like, the more that we network and talk to people, the more I realize a lot of them don't know what they're doing, and they're turning into these stars, but they don't have a management team or anything. And they're almost going to be at a point where they end up hurting themselves more than they're helping themselves.
That's why it's good that a label like yours gets involved rather than like one of the major labels. Because, I mean, the how can I put this? The chokehold that the major labels had back in the day is no longer where it is today. Obviously, like you get a lot of musicians going independent, and that should tell you a lot, really, about.
That's almost the preferred method now with a lot of artists, is to stay independent.
Yeah, and I think it depends. I mean, I always say to every musician that's been on here that I think distribution deals are the way to go. If you're going to deal with major labels, distribution only. They should not be owning your music at all. The whole point of a label is to give you exposure, to help you, like you just said there, like you laid out. It's about management, because as a musician, as a creative, you're not necessarily a good business person. Not everyone is business minded, and sometimes you do need some help to do that. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not a bad thing. Maybe over time you'll learn the biz and then you can do it yourself. But I think everyone needs representation, especially when they get to that big number. And like you said there, that person underselling themselves, you see that in all areas of business and marketing and in general. Like underselling yourself is one of the worst things you can do. Whereas if you're signed by a label, they will quote prices that are right for you based on your numbers, based on your projected numbers, and based on your talent, the things you can do as well. Like everyone that's blown up on TikTok, like I see a lot of people that are desperately trying to get more and more and more and more followers, but they don't really know what they're doing. Like I think you can earn a little bit of money from TikTok, I think, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
But that's the thing, like that's relative. Like the true money that you can make from it is through things like sponsorships, through, if you got big enough and you managed to, leverage that into other things. Like if
Yeah.
I was a TikToker, I would be thinking about, okay, can I leverage this into maybe moving into YouTube, moving into other platforms, getting deals? Like you got to think, what's going to lead me to my next thing?
Exactly. And that, I feel like that's something that's kind of it's not extremely business minded, but that is something that's business minded that a lot of people don't think about, which is where when you see these platforms, like when Vine like died, there's some great creators on Vine that weren't able to make a move over, but then there are the ones that were slightly business minded that kind of saw it coming and shifted.
You know what fascinates me about that as well is obviously Vine ended in 2016, and we've only recently got YouTube Shorts. That was in 2020, a separate algorithm for, you know, completely different way of. I don't know if it's really going to translate into much business though, because from what I hear, the ad rates even on like 10,000 views is like nothing.
Yeah.
But point is, it's happened. And, you know, yeah, there was a great proportion of those Viners who set up YouTubes, who went into other things. You know, famous people like Cody Ko pulled it off, you know, and I'd say he's doing much better now than he was doing then. You know, it was very much a formative thing. But now we're seeing that shift where short content is now the preferred content. It's not to say that long form isn't, but it's just different. It's a different audience. You know, people's attention spans are much, you know, quicker now. So they need quick content, quick. And if they want to see longer content, they'll subscribe to you. They'll become, you know, and that's why if you look at what I do online, it's all different. If you go on the TikTok and the Instagram, it's short, it's quick, to the point. On YouTube, it's long. There's podcasts, there's live streams. It's done purposefully in that manner because of thinking about the platform and what people are looking for more on the platform. But even with this shorts thing, I've had to set up separate accounts because it's like, that's the only way you can really do it. It doesn't make much sense having a channel that or platform that has a mixture of both. I think it's better to just point people towards different things. And then, you know what I mean? Like people can kind of, it's the same as music. We bring it back to music. You know, it's like if you establish yourself as one thing and then you randomly go, like, just let's say you're a rapper and then your next album is a rock album, right? That doesn't make any sense. But if you say, okay, I'm doing a side project and it's in rock, people are like, oh, okay. Or if you say beforehand, okay, I'm gonna do deluxe edition and it's gonna have some experimental stuff on it. Like you prepare people and you explain what you're doing, then people will probably take it well.
What's his name? Trippie Redd just did that with his album.
Good. That guy's very good. Anyway, yeah, let's bring it back to you. So one sort of final question about music before we move on. What are your kind of goals and aspirations overall for your music career?
Honestly, I just want to be able to music is something I'm still very new in, and it's still something I'm still building up a career, but I just want to be able to just take it as far as I can take it, honestly, wherever that is. Like, obviously, I think everyone's goal in music is to kind of be successful and to grow farther than where they are now. So honestly, as long as I keep seeing growth at like the end of either each year or after the release of each project, I'm happy with that, honestly.
Cool, man. Now let's bring it to your acting career. So you are an actor, predominantly a theatre actor, but you have played an on-screen role in, I've heard of this series, I haven't watched it, but it's a sci-fi series called Talisman, and you play a character by the name of Jimmy Gardner, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What were the best and worst, or let's put it that way, the best and most challenging moments of this experience? And as I understand, is this your first on-screen role?
Yeah, that is my first on-screen role. What's funny is you said I'm predominantly stage, which is true, but I've actually done, and I have like lined up now. They haven't been yet either because of COVID or anything, but that's actually going to shift very soon to being more film than anything else. But yeah, that was my first on-screen acting role, and honestly, it was awesome. I remember I got there, I think my first shoot was, and this could be totally wrong, I think it was a week was the first. So how it worked out is originally it was a short film, and then they're like, oh, we got to turn this into a web series. So the first shoot for the short film was, I think, like 3 days or a week or so. And then when we went back to film the web series, I think that was like a week and some change. And at first, the filming the short film was, I had like an amazing time. I'd never been on stage, so anything that I was doing was exciting for me. I'm not sorry, not stage, on film. So anything I was doing was exciting. I was like, oh, this is so sick. Oh, there's a camera. Oh, there's co-stars. And like, I was just basically like a kid in a candy store. And then once we went back and started filming the short film, I think I'd done like 2 stage like plays in between. And so I knew a little bit more of like my act, like how to act and like what I was doing and all that. And then it was a little bit more normal to me too, because I've done more in the industry. So it was less so like a new experience. And so I was a little bit more professional the second time around, but I also grew a relationship with the director and through that too. And so he's honestly one of the main people that have helped me put put the label on track and just help me guide my career too, honestly. And he's working on amazing things coming up. He has another web series, or I'm not sure if it's going to be web series or what right now, but even that's going to be amazing when that comes out. But
you're going to be a part of it?
I am.
Yeah. That's all it takes, man. Good relationships with people in the industry, and you never know where it can lead.
Yeah. So like it started off as like a like a short film that was like originally just going to be another thing on my resume, and turned into being an amazing relationship with the director to help as like a mentor for my career. And then also too, when we went back to film the web series, it was like an amazing experience because like we had different locations, and I think overall I was supposed to be on set for 7 days, and about a month or two before we started filming, I got another role in another state that was not drivable. Yeah, so I was on set for the Talisman for like 3 days. Then I flew to another state. The day I landed, and then had to go straight to set, stayed there for 2 days, flew back, and then finished the web series off. And though I had like 3 scenes on the web series when I came back, and those were supposed to be like really emotional scenes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I was just so tired that it worked. It looked awesome. I'm supposed to just look like I'm like beaten down and tired and exhausted, and I really was. So it worked out awesome. And so filming that web series and then just seeing what it's done now, like it's won some awards. And
oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And so it's like really cool to see how it grew, because I think when I was first on set, I was like, oh, this is just an experience. And then watching something that's just an experience grow to, wow, this is doing amazing, is like just a really cool feeling to have.
Yeah, see, this is the thing as well, because you come across very humble, and that's awesome. Keep that. But I think the reality is, especially if you've got stuff lined up and stuff, you're probably going to get pretty well known pretty quickly. It's going to be one of those things, and that's usually how it works. You take that one role, or you meet that one person. Like I knew a guy once who I grew up with him, and he's a musician, and I think he randomly got noticed by like Ryan Seacrest, that guy that was a host on like American Idol.
Yeah,
he just happened to like see this guy's video, and he got in touch with him. You know what I mean? Like this band that I was in one time, a metal band. My then girlfriend handed a business card to the drummer of this band, and that guy gave it to his PR manager, and whoop, wouldn't you know it, we got offered to go on a tour with them. These things happen. People forget as well. They think, oh, that glamorous industry, and oh, it seems so obtainable, and how could it ever happen to me? And it's like it can happen.
Yeah,
It probably will. The more you keep doing stuff, it's like with me right now. Like I keep putting stuff out there that's going not like fully viral, but it gets like a lot of attention. Like I had something get featured in the Hollywood Reporter the other day. It wasn't really like specifically like me, but it was like just a tweet that I made. I was just being like just a goof with something, doing like a little bit of a skit in response to some weird interview that Orlando Bloom had done. It's kind of wild. I just thought, oh, let's just have some fun with it. And like loads of people found it funny. And I was like, now this is interesting because it gets a lot of attention. And I jumped on it. I made sure to reply to everyone that responded and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, all it takes, because I got a lot of my friends who say this, shout out to Childish Jacko. People always say this to me, like, all it takes is that one video, you know, and then you can make it. And in your case, maybe it's that one song, maybe it's that one acting role. But before you know it, you're going to get a lot of attention really quickly. And I suppose it's really good that you have, well, firstly, your own representation. And you're in charge of it as well. So like, if there are any contracts that come your way, you'll be able to, you know, negotiate a percentage that works for you and not get screwed in the process.
Yeah,
you know,
awesome. Like, I know more so about my music career than I do with acting. So I have, like, with my label, I've got that's all under me. But when it comes to my acting and all that, I have a separate manager and she handles all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, be careful.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. Now, yeah, one other thing on that. So are you going to be appearing, is it going to be another series of the Talisman? You going to appear in a second season or something?
As of right now, nothing is in the set. Nothing is 100% definite, but there was some interest there. It did well. There was some interest, and it was weird because it wasn't even, and it was shot in the U.S., filmed in the U.S., and that's where it was majorly released. But it started doing really well in other countries. Yeah. So we've talked about it. So it's pretty much like a we'll see type deal.
I suppose it depends on the cost, really, doesn't it? I mean, if there's a big enough interest and you can sort of make it financially viable overseas, then it's justifiable. But if it's the sort of thing where, okay, maybe it'd be great in those countries, but then we might not be able to make the money in the US, it's like, you got to think about like that as well. Yeah. And it's so tricky because I mean, obviously sci-fi is a big franchise anywhere in the world, but you know I can tell you here in the UK, it's massive. You know, we have conventions here just like anywhere else, but it's a tricky one. You never know where things are going to work, how they're going to work, when they're going to work. It's crazy how these things work, but best of luck with that. So one thing I want to ask you is, what kind of on-screen roles are you kind of looking for in the future? Like, I know you probably might say like, well, I'll take on anything, but like, is there anything in particular? Because for me, I want to do villain roles. I love playing the bad guy. I love that. But what are you looking to do?
Honestly, one of like my dream roles is, I have like two dream roles basically. It's one is to be like any superhero basically would be awesome, but then also to star in like a boxing movie and would be like really cool to kind of do that body transformation as a boxer. I wrote an entire boxing film and I was like working for him. We were really close to actually filming it. And then like kind of at the last minute, we kind of stepped back and yeah. But that's like one of my like main goals is to really be able to like do that. But then other than that, like right now, just to be in like a while I'm still in my like teenage years, or at least look like I am, is to be in like a teenage drama film or like stuff like that. Kind of like a Paper Towns or like a If I Stay and different things like that.
So you mentioned that you like superheroes, and obviously Spider-Man is a big thing right now, you know. This exciting new third edition of Spider-Man's franchise coming out, the multiverse movie. Are you thinking maybe I could play Miles Morales?
I have been thinking that since Miles Morales came out, because he's a really new character overall. But I have literally, since they introduced him, I was like, that's like a role that I'm looking for.
Oh, I'm so excited, man. Like I watched the Into the Spider-Verse recently because I played the Spider-Man Miles Morales game and it's good, and it's got a good storyline. And it's interesting, you know, and I have like not arguments but mini kind of like discussions with people on how I would portray the Miles Morales thing. And I personally think the best time to bring him in would be similar to what they did in Into the Spider-Verse, like killing off the original Spider-Man. But you got to be so careful with how you do that, because you don't
Yeah,
want people to like kind of not like the new Spider-Man. And it's like he's got to be a replacement, but he's different. Miles Morales' story is so different to Peter Parker's, and it's much more of an underdog story than Peter Parker's is in many ways, which is interesting because I mean, Peter Parker's story is this like sort of spotty teenager. He's useless. He's just like, you know, he's a nerd, which is not, there's nothing wrong with being a nerd. I'm a nerd, but you know, that's the draw. I think that's why I like Spider-Man. But Miles Morales is a bit, you know, he's cooler. He's a bit more clued up. I'd say he's probably a bit smarter than Peter Parker. If you look at it depends. Obviously, there's different interpretations and stuff.
yeah,
But like that's generally how he's been portrayed. And in the context of bringing it back to the cinematic universe, I think they shouldn't jump the gun with Miles Morales. Like there's talk about, oh, they should bring him in the multiverse thing, and I don't think they should. I think they should wait on that story, because I think that's a really good story that's got some legs. And I think maybe I don't know, maybe they could introduce him, but like I think don't make him Spider-Man yet.
yeah. I agree. Like I think they've already kind of like planted the seed almost when it comes to him. Like in Spider-Man: Homecoming, like he what's his name? The Prowler, played by
Yes, of
Donald
course.
Glover. He was like, I've got like a nephew in this city. So like anyone who knows like the comics kind of understood what that meant. And so like he's there. We haven't seen him yet, but we know that eventually he's gonna
It's
pop up.
coming. It's coming. Okay. I just wanted to say that because the idea popped in my head. I saw you're an actor, you're a young guy. I think it's most young black guys' dreams right now to be Miles Morales. Like, let's be real.
Absolutely.
And it's exciting because look, we've seen Spider-Man done to death. We're not going to see another origin story anytime soon. But Miles Morales is an origin story that I think a lot of us would actually be interested in seeing. And I know it's been done in video games and stuff, but I mean, they interestingly didn't do it with Peter Parker, this most recent incarnation. It was just Cliff Notes. Okay,
Yeah.
he's Spider-Man. Great. Now let's get into, you know, Marvel Universe. It's like, whoa, okay, that we
Yeah.
can work with that. That's
Which is
different.
like the best way to do it. I think honestly, that's why like switching over to DC real fast, like with the DCEU, the reason Batman versus Superman didn't do so well is we didn't need the whole Batman origin story again. At this point, pretty much, if you ask someone that doesn't even understand comics, like, hey, how did Batman become Batman? You pretty much know.
It's so true. Yeah. Like once you've seen it, I mean, the only way it ever makes sense to do another origin is if you do it drastically differently.
Yeah.
In some way. So like, I don't know, if you're going to do Batman again, Jesus, I don't know, maybe make him a vicious killer of, you know, go against his, you know, general kind of ethos, which is never kill anyone, be the, you know, Cape Crusader. That's the only way I think you should ever really do it. But, you know, the studios, I think this is a big problem right now, is that they kind of constantly want to reboot things. And, you know, like, for instance, they're going to do a reboot of Blade soon. They're working on
Yeah, I
that.
saw that.
I'm very excited about it, but I don't want to see the same movie again.
Yeah, I agree.
You know?
It's gonna be cool, but it's all about how you do it. I think from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man to the Amazing Spider-Man series with Andrew Garfield versus the Tobey Maguire one, when you looked at those, I feel like it was basically the same movie, at least for the first one, but with different villains.
Mm.
I
Well,
think
I don't know. I didn't buy Andrew Garfield as Spider. Like, I liked him as Spider-Man, but I thought he's too cool to be Spider-Man.
I agree. Yeah.
You know, and that's not nothing against Andrew Garfield. I think he did a good interpretation. I think it gets a lot of hate unnecessarily. It's just too soon afterwards, I think, is the
Yeah.
problem. It's like, oh, we just did that. Like, let's do something else. Yeah. And I understand there's a lot of like money in Spider-Man. It's a great franchise. It's an exciting character. It's very relatable, but yeah, you got to do something different. And I think that's what they've kind of nailed with Tom Holland, is they were like, okay, we're not going to give you the same stuff. We're going to give you something different. And in fairness, like, this is him fully in high school as well, which they kind of hinted at, they flirted at with both of them, but they never really properly explored it like long term. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what
And I
that
think what's
looks like.
awesome about the ones with Tom Holland in them is they're teenage movies, but the main character happens to be a superhero.
Yes, precisely. Yeah.
Like it's basically it's Ferris Bueller's Day Off, all of those types of films, but the main character just happens to be a superhero.
I love that you know that movie. It always pains me when people don't know that movie. It's a classic movie. If you haven't seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, go see it. It's like quintessential 80s.
Absolutely.
Fun
I
fact.
Everyone needs to see. There's like a list of movies that everyone needs to see at some point, and that is definitely on that list.
One thing that blows me away, this is a fact about that movie, is there's never been an official soundtrack made for it, because apparently the director said that he just couldn't see why people would be interested. And it's got one of the best soundtracks of all time. It's so 80s. It's like oozing 80s. I don't know how else to put it. It's just yeah. Anyway, moving it forward. Well, yeah, sort of moving it into theater. So this is an interesting question. Do you prefer theater acting or on-screen acting? Because I know every actor has their own kind of what they prefer. I've never personally done theater acting, but I have zero interest in it. I just feel like I'm better suited to on-screen stuff. I prefer it. Yeah, that's just my personal thing. But what's your preference?
Honestly, I'd say overall, I'm more interested in doing film, but I still love theater. I feel like they're two totally different animals, though.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the preparation for them is extremely different. Now, I've been on, like, when it comes to like different sets that I've been on sets where we've had our lines for months and months and months beforehand, and we show up and no one really knows their lines for a film, but we make it, like, they make it work. Or like I've showed up and it's like one actor does not know any of their lines and they're just finding the lines out the day of, but they make it work, because it's like, I guess the easiest way of putting it is, in film you can yell cut. On stage, what's out there is out there. And I feel like it takes a heightened awareness of like what you're doing. Because, I think some people in a good play, you don't notice when the actors mess up.
Mm-hmm.
On stage, it's your job to notice when someone messes up. Like the last play I did, I remember there was a moment where one of the actors, a prop wasn't on stage that was supposed to be on stage.
Yeah.
And it was an important piece and so it was such like a last minute decision on what to do. And I think someone filled in the lines and they're like, hey, go grab this for me, right before, once they noticed it wasn't there.
That's clever.
And so we were actually able to someone was able to go off stage and come back in and bring it. And so it's like, really, I'd say when you're on stage, it's more of a team effort. Like each actor is kind of working together and bringing each other up. Like on film, like obviously you all want to work together, but when one person is kind of slacking on film, you can work around that and you can still fix that. But on stage, if it's not flowing like the ocean, it's not going to work.
It's mad that you get people that are slacking as well. Like I've been on sets where that's happened, and man, the directors get pissed. And I understand it's frustrating. You got a schedule to keep. You've only got places rented for a certain amount of time, and you got someone who doesn't know their lines, and it's like, and it's different because, like you said, sometimes people get handed their lines on the day of, and that's ridiculous. And obviously, they're not going to know their lines. But sometimes you get like 2 weeks to prepare. What's your excuse?
Yeah, I agree.
Unbelievable.
Even with stage though, like sometimes like you'll see actors kind of take a little bit longer to memorize their lines. I think on stage, I memorize my lines faster for film than stage. I don't really know why it works that way. Maybe it's the fact that there's so much more consistency, at least on like in film, you can kind of break it down scene by scene, but on stage, it just takes me longer. And I remember there was one show, and he's probably going to listen to this, and because we still keep in touch. I had one show, I did it last year, and we just did not have our lines together the way we needed to. And the director was yelling at us, and he was like trying to show us what we needed to do. And he was like, you need to have energy. You need to know what you're doing. And he was walking around, he was yelling at us, and he went to sit on one of the beds that was like one of the, it was like part of the set, and it wasn't finished yet. And he didn't know that. And he was yelling at us. He sat on it and went straight through it.
Oh no.
And that moment on the show, because that was like people were getting frustrated because someone had dropped out of the cast, and it was just kind of having a rough build up. But that moment there, all of a sudden, next rehearsal, everything came back and it was sharp. Everything looked great. And I don't think it was because he yelled at us. It was really because he fell through the bed and just gave us the moment of like lightheartedness that we really needed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's important. Sometimes you do have to take a break, have a laugh. You know, it's. I think you gotta be able to have a laugh during filming. You know, it can't just be serious the whole time. I understand sometimes you got to have a serious production, serious moments and stuff. But yeah, sometimes you need that. It's because I mean, and I suppose it depends on the type of actor you are. But a lot of the time, it's very real. Like you mentioned earlier, you know, you took a day where you had to do some deep acting, some emotional scenes, and you were exhausted, so it was very
Yeah.
real. And I don't know, like when I try to tap into deeper emotions for certain parts, like I will think about things that hurt me. You know, I will try to put myself in that feeling. So you're making yourself feel bad, feel sad, feel miserable, and it's not ideal, but it's grueling because people forget that it's when you have that kind of emotions to contend with, it's physically draining as well. It can take a lot out of you. So you sometimes need that laugh, breath of fresh air, quick reality check. Like, oh yeah, this isn't real. We're acting. This
Yeah.
should be fun. Like, you know.
Yeah, I'm generally pretty lighthearted overall when I'm on sets. Like I'm obviously I'm not like getting in the way and like joking and everything, but I'm like
Right.
usually I'm not like too uptight and too serious. I love what I'm doing. And so it's like it's hard for me to hide the fact that I'm enjoying it as far as it is. So it's like but when it comes to scenes where I need to like be upset or get quiet and all that, it's like usually my process with that is like I usually have like a playlist for each show. And it's like I've got like 4 songs that are like usually like really sad that I would listen to before then. And I just try and get into like the head of like the character and like try and like just get into the emotions of it.
That's very clever. I might steal that idea. Cheers. um, how much freedom for ad libbing do you actually get? I mean, you mentioned a little bit there that sometimes you kind of have to, but like in terms of the directors you work with, people sort of writing the show, like do you on theatre and on screen, like which kind of gives you more leeway? How much leeway do you get? You know, is ad libbing very common or is it like as and
Um,
when kind of thing?
it kind of really depends on what it's really more so on the director.
Right.
Um, from my experiences, like definitely in film, there's more freedom of ad libs, especially when you're not working on an original play. And so basically, if you're on a play, but it's not like the first production of it,
Mhm.
the directors have like a standard that they want to maintain. And especially if they're trying to get the playwright there too, because the playwright doesn't want to come and watch their show be completely different. So
Oh,
generally, yeah,
okay.
generally when I'm on stage, it's very much stick to the script literally and like follow what it says. Um, in film, I know when we were filming Talisman, we had a lot of there's a lot of time for ad libs, and I think one of like the lines that becomes like a running joke throughout the series was ad libbed. I was like, shut up. I was like, I called them because the whole thing is that all the characters are very not all the characters. The main character, he's Brian. He's very into like the stars, and he's using a telescope. And so like there's a scene where we're kind of making fun of each other, and I call him Space Boy, and like just like it's like a joke, just kind of like throwing something at him, and that ended up being like a running line from my character to him throughout the
Oh,
show.
that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. When things happen like that naturally, that's always the best thing, isn't it? Awesome.
Yeah. So like usually through Talisman, like we had pretty open range to kind of throw some things in there, ad lib. Um basically if as long as we knew our characters and we knew what the characters would do. But at the same time, I in high school I wasn't like in like the drama club or anything like that, but I took drama as an art one year because I had to just to have that like class in there. And the drama teacher, he said something which I wasn't like very much like, oh, I'm an actor while I was in that class. but he just said something just kind of passing through to one of the kids that was in the plays, and he was like, an actor should never say, my character wouldn't say that, or my character wouldn't do that, because yes, they do, it's in the script. And so, and that's like something I thought about. I was like, because I was never really like, oh, my character wouldn't say this, or my character wouldn't do this, but like that's so true. Like your character, if they wouldn't do that, like if it's in the script, your character would do that. So
one thing they often say in the wrestling industry when they're writing promos and stuff, and a wrestler will say something like that, obviously it's a ridiculous thing to say, but I think a bigger problem with that is that what you're essentially saying when you argue back is, oh, this is shit, this is terrible, why would I say this? A better thing to do in that scenario is to think about, okay, if you honestly feel like this is not something that the character would say, like it's just not logical, it doesn't fit some way, propose something that you do think will fit. Propose an alternative. Because that's the thing, like directors, it might sound scary. It might sound like, oh, like, why would they listen to me? I'm a lowly actor. But they're a creative, just like you. They want their piece to be as good as possible and to be logical. So if you suggest an alternative, it's like, okay, maybe we could try it that way. And like, you can even just go a little bit further with that and be like, how about we try it this way and your way, and we'll see which one turns out better.
Yeah, especially if you're respectful with it too. Like I remember there was one line in a play that I did where I had so much trouble delivering the line. And so I brought it to the director and I was like, hey, like, I'm really struggling to like deliver this one line. I was like, what can we kind of do to fix it? Like, obviously, as a director for a play, you're sitting right in front of it and watching it go through. So I was like, what are your notes to me here for this? Like, what can we do? And he was like, change it up. Say what feels right for you. Yeah. Switch that like one line. And so then I was like, all right. So we kind of went through rehearsals, and it was like, if we did the scene twice, I'd work on delivering it the way it's written in the script and what felt comfortable. And then we kind of made the decision of, okay, ultimately, after getting his notes back and like working on it, I was able to deliver the original line. So I was able to work that out. But as long as you're respectful with it, I mean, most directors won't really have an issue with you coming to them and being like, hey, I'm having issues with this like one line.
And like going back to that point as well, like I think, because I've had that as well sometimes, where I'll look at the lines and I'll think like, oh, this doesn't fit somehow. It sounds out of place. And I'll spend that time thinking about not only the alternative that I'm going to pitch, but I also think about, well, how can I actually, just make this work on some level? And often what we'll do is like what I laid out there, we'll just go for different takes, different styles, and see which just feels more natural. And sometimes the final take will just be like an ad lib, or sometimes a variation, like you get like a mixture. So like it will blend the original line with a few other words. Like sometimes just changing like one word just makes it all the more real, I suppose.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, and I've written like as I go farther along with my music, I've even like written like I've like 2 or 3 music videos released, actually maybe more than that, but like even with those, I've written all the scripts for them, and like some of them have like real actors in them and stuff. And so there was one that I wrote where there was supposed to be a scene where there was like lines in it, and the actress came to me and she's like, hey, like this scene, like the lines here, I'm not really like getting and not able to get that out. Like, what should we do with it? And I was like, she explained it. I was like, okay, I see your point. Like, let's cut it. Like, we don't need it. And so it's really all about it's about the director, and because sometimes directors won't be able to take that criticism, quite honestly. Sometimes they'll be like, no, what I wrote is fine. But other times, as long as you bring it up to them respectfully, they'll be able to be like, hey, like, all right, let's see what we can do here.
I gotta say, as well, like even the people that like let's say like as a big director, like I don't know, Martin Scorsese or something, right? I still contend that you could challenge him as long as, like you say, it's respectful. Like, because that's what people forget. They're like, oh, why wouldn't, how would they ever take me seriously? And it's like, it's art. That's what it always will be. It doesn't matter if the guy is Oscar nominated, Oscar winning. Like it's about what we're doing right now and how's the best way to make it work. And like, we're all creatives. We're all geared into this. We're all plugged in. We all signed up for this. We all want it to work and succeed. So it's about showing each other respect and pitching ideas in a respectful way. Like, I don't think any human being is going to react well if you go, oh, that's terrible, why would we do it that way? Because yeah, it's personal. You wrote it because that's your vision of how you see it, and just because this other guy can't see it, I mean, I can understand that opinion. If I was a director and I got a guy sort of getting, I don't know, kind of rude to me in the way he's saying it, I'd just be like, get someone else, get someone who can see my vision. No? As harsh as that sounds, but it's true, you know. It's but yeah. Anyway, moving it on. What advice would you give to aspiring actors based on your personal experiences?
Honestly, I would say to them, just do it. Go out there, even especially like what we're even though you asked about acting, you could tie it into music. Nowadays, if you want to be an actor, it's so easy for you to just take a phone, write up a little script, and like record something with your friends. It's all about what your main goal is and how much you actually love it. Like, for example, some people love acting, but they don't want to take it as a career. They want to do it as a hobby. So like, there's like community theater. You can like just record some short films with your friends. It's all about where you want to take it and what you want to do with it. So if your passion is to be like a big star actor, I don't really have advice for you yet, because I don't know either. I'm still trying to get there.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. But if you just enjoy acting and it's not what you want to do as a career, you love the hobby of it and you love the art of it, there's so many different outlets that people never think of to be able to do it. Like, I know a lot of times people will say, oh, I want to be an actor, and they'll look at TV or movies and be like, I want to do that. I don't want to be a career in it. I just want to do that. And they overlook the fact that it's like, there's so many different websites to like cast yourself in and get into different like films and stuff. Like, Backstage, honestly, like the idea of it is one of like the greatest things for like people trying to become actors and just trying to like build themselves up. Like, I've done all the music videos and all of like the searches for when we're trying to like find talent to add to the label. We did those through Backstage.
For a moment, I thought you were talking about actual Backstage areas, but you're actually talking about the website Backstage.
Yeah.
Now I understand. Like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm just being an idiot. Yeah. No, it's a good tool. Actually, there's I think we use Backstage here in the UK, but there's other alternatives as well. And yeah, those websites do well. It kind of sucks. There's no, from what I see, like free alternatives. Most of these you have to pay for. Because I would be doing it myself. Like, and this is why I don't consider. I always tag myself as an aspiring actor, not professional, because I have done some official extras work in movies and stuff, but until I get like a proper acting role where it's like paid gig in something that people have seen, then I don't really consider it like real, you know. But with that being said, yeah, I think what you say is very true. Like, for me, I kind of want to do everything, you know what I mean? Music, acting, YouTube, you name it. Like, I don't want to just be stuck to one thing. And I also kind of want to do stuff that makes sense for me, if that makes sense. It's like I really like playing villains, particularly with like different variances of the American accent. I just have a lot of fun with that. I think it's a lot of fun. And that's where I'm headed with it. I want to try a lot of different roles and see, you know, how well I can do the chameleon. How well can I, you know, fit these different parts? And I think that's more of the draw than you know, going full time with it. And like, obviously, if those opportunities were there, I'd take them. But I think that's kind of the key, isn't it? It's like, what opportunities are available, what presents themselves, what makes sense. Like with me, I've kind of discovered through podcasting, I'm able to do live streaming and stuff, and it's very similar. Maybe there's opportunities in TV broadcasting, maybe radio. I'm kind of like, do you know what I mean? Like, the ideas are coming.
Yeah.
And through acting, I've discovered like voice acting, which I have actually had some opportunities to do, funnily enough. And it's exciting, and it's like acting, but it's kind of isolated. I don't know. It's very, you still got to go through the same motions, but you kind of got to really put that emphasis on the voice, obviously, in a way that I don't feel you have to do always with straight acting, if that makes sense, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, totally. Because even like in voice acting, I haven't done a lot of voice acting, but even with it too, it's like if we're having a normal conversation right now and we're on film and I'm supposed to be a little upset, like maybe I'll talk like this. But in voice acting, if you talk like this, like that's not going to work. You need to find a way to emphasize being upset without being too overbearing, but also being a little bit more emphatic in the voice. So voice acting is like a huge skill that people overlook, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I think it's getting bigger, but it's very slow with voice acting. I think it helps that we've got major actors like Bradley Cooper obviously did it in the oh god, my mind's gone blank. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies and the Marvel, Avenger movies and stuff. And literally, I mean, that was the best gig ever. He just showed up to the studio, did all his stuff, done, gets to show up at the premieres. Great. No silly bodysuits, no long waiting for 18 hours until you finally get cut. It's just studio, go home. Sorted. But anyway, let's move it forward. I've got some random questions for you. So you are from New Jersey.
Yes.
What are the best and worst things about New Jersey?
One of the best things about New Jersey, which I didn't even think about until I got older, was the fact that if I want to go to the beach, like it takes me 15 minutes, which is something like growing up, I was like, okay, like everyone has that, right? But as you get older, you realize just how much of like a luxury and like how much of a cool thing that is to be able to just go to like the beach and see the ocean. Like there's some people that never see the ocean in their life, and like, which is like crazy to me when you really think about it. Like
that's weird.
Like for me, it's like 15 minutes. Like I can literally go to the beach every day. And then there's some people where you think that live in like North Dakota. They probably haven't like been able to go to a beach or something like that. So that's
like travel out at least though. Do you know what I mean? It's like you just got to. I mean, I grew up in London, but so we don't really have any we don't have any beaches there, but like you go to places that have beaches. You go because you need to see that stuff at least once.
Like even that, like what you're saying, it's like to go to see a beach, it's like a vacation.
Right.
For me, to go see a beach is like a hour trip, like 15 minutes.
Saturday.
Stay for 30 minutes, leave. And then like another really cool thing is the fact that New York City is so close without being in the city. And so that's like a really cool thing for me.
So I've had some New Jersey people on the show. I've had some New Yorkers on the show. I've had people from outside. Everyone seems to have interesting opinions on this. Where does the kind of New York versus New Jersey whole rivalry come from? Is that purely sports based, or because I've seen in popular culture it's like a big thing? I mean, very famously, I saw it in How I Met Your Mother. There's Ted is constantly going on about the character of Ted is constantly going on about how he hates New Jersey, and it's like I get the jokes to some extent, but it's like, what's the deal here? Like, it just seems like different places, really.
I'd say more so it's definitely a sport thing, but I think a lot of times it's just New Jersey people versus New York people are very different types of people.
Right. Yeah.
And so here's the thing: a lot of people that don't know New Jersey people think that the Jersey Shore, like the show, is strictly New Jersey people, which isn't necessarily accurate. But like I understand.
What did you think of that show when you saw it? Was it embarrassing? Was it truthful in some degree? Like,
it's truthful in some degree. I mean, it's a huge show. Like even here, it's like in New Jersey, it's like huge. Like there's so many like Jersey Shore fans here. But I think part of the reason that it's so huge here is the fact that like the Jersey Shore house, you can like easily go to. Like it's not that like, it's not like sometimes you'll see houses in like reality shows and stuff like that, and it's like a set, it's not actually a house. The Jersey Shore house is real, and you can like walk right up to it without any like issues. So I think that that's like a huge thing, and that's what makes it so popular here too.
Cool. Okay, I got a bit more of a serious question now, so put your thinking cap on. Do you have any life goals outside of your work that you want to achieve?
Yeah, so currently, like right now, I'm in college. I go for music production.
Awesome.
So it's kind of a very it's intertwined in my career as well. But that's like my goal is to obviously graduate, get a degree, and like overall, just I want to be able to like eventually down the line have a family, have like a career. I want to have a career that when I look back on it, I can say in life, okay, this is what I did in my career, and this is what I did in my like life, and be able to have those two be separate but also combined in the big picture, if that makes sense.
That's awesome, man. I dig that. I totally agree with you. It's the same for me. A lot of these things are dependent on money, I'll be real. But I think it's that's the great thing, isn't it? Like once you got the money to do certain things, it's more a case of vision and what you're able to, it's like Napoleon Hill said, whatever the mind can conceive, it can achieve. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And it's about how much work you put in and then taking advantage of certain opportunities as well. I think sometimes certain opportunities are hidden in a way, like they'll be presented in a weird way, and you'll be like, well, why would I do that? And it's like, no, maybe you should do that. Like, yeah. Who knows where it can go? Like, who knows who you'll meet? That's
exactly thing. Yeah.
Awesome, man. So, okay, do you have any, I know this will sound like a bit of a weird question, but bear with me. Do you have any kind of like side hustles or jobs that you're using to kind of fund what you're doing now? Or are you able to kind of fully live off music and acting and stuff? Like, how are you able to make this all happen?
Well, luckily I'm young. So, I mean, I have the luxury of, I live with my parents. Like I live at home. I do all that. So for like the longest time, like my career was able to kind of go through work, like through itself, basically. Like a lot of stuff was funded through them. I've had real jobs though. I've worked at Chipotle.
What was that like?
That was horrible, honestly.
Oh, please tell. This is what I was hoping for.
Working at Chipotle was honestly probably one of the hardest experiences, because it was like I'd go to school till 3:00. I had to get at Chipotle at 3:30 and then stay until closing. And there was just so many people every single day lined up. And it's like, this is like something where it's like, I hate complaining about it, because I have like the luxury of being able to get paid for acting, and music, which is like awesome. And then it's like having like a real job was horrible. I absolutely hated working at Chipotle. The only thing I enjoyed about it is during the breaks, you got free food. You could eat whatever you want. So that was a plus. And then at the end of the day, a lot of the food gets thrown out, so you can take food home with you. So those were like the two pluses.
One thing I want to just point out that was interesting that you said there, but I've heard as well. You mentioned that it's a sort of a real job. Now, I understand where that kind of phrasing comes from, because there's a lot of people out there who go, oh, well, acting must be easy. All you have to do is act in front of a camera and you get paid this money, and you get this and you get that. And it's like, do you know what? Until you've been on a set for 18, 19 hours every single day, standing around, doing nothing, don't tell me that it's not a real job.
Yeah,
it's just different. It's different.
And that's the thing. I think I kind of characterize it as like a real job in my mind, just because it's like
real world kind of.
It's a job, but in my opinion, it's like I'm the only kind of person in like my friends and like my inner circle that like does this. Like both my parents, my dad, he's a retired police officer. He also works in like education and like writes curriculum and stuff like that. My mom, she works in like the field of mental health. Like she's a social worker, she's a therapist, all that. And like my friends, even the people that I have signed to my label to like do this, like one of my best friends, the one that I mentioned earlier, I kind of turned her into a rapper. Like that wasn't what she was looking to do at
Bad
first.
Influence. Bad influence.
Even with her, like she has like real jobs and she has like real goals in like life. And so it's like, for me, I kind of fell into like accidentally characterizing it as like a real job versus not a real job.
Oh, I get it.
Just because it was like something so different. And for me, I guess it's like, I'm still so amazed. It's like, I get paid for doing what I've literally dreamed about doing. So when I think about that, it's, I guess for me, it's like, it's not a job. It's just fun.
Dude, I know the feeling. Like in the few times that I've been paid for acting gigs, or when I started working in marketing, like I felt the same way. I was like, I can't believe they pay me to do this. Like, like what? If you'd have
It's
told
really
me
like a
years
cool
ago
thing.
when I was like slaving away in a hotel job or slaving away in supermarkets and all the other stuff that I've spoken a great deal about on the show, so I do apologize. I am trying to talk less and less about those things. I feel sorry for my audience sometimes. Anyway, yeah, no, if you'd have told me back then, I would have been paid to, like, you know, write things for a living, or paid to, I don't know, do a couple of lines for an audio drama and get paid for that. I would have been like, that's crazy. But it's true. I mean, I think it's just, you have to keep putting yourself out there, keep trying, and eventually the universe does its magic, but you got to keep pushing yourself.
Yeah, like I absolutely like agree. It's something so crazy because like when I was like 3 years old, I got a drum set for either Christmas or my birthday, and I played that drum set every single day. And I was like,
Wow.
Mom, Dad, look, like I'm like a little rock star, and like it was like something I loved, and I never would have just like obviously when you're that old, you don't think like, oh, what am I gonna do? What's my job gonna be? And to think like something that I did as like just a little fun, like every kid grabs a drumstick and like hits the drums a few times, like to be able to say like this is like what I like do for a living. And like even still now I wouldn't characterize it as doing it for a living, like although yes it is, I wouldn't really characterize it as what I do for a living until like I'm like living like on my own and like, but like just to be able to be paid for it in general is just really the coolest thing.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I know you're a young lad, but you know, I've been asking all of my guests on the show this, and I think it always gets people thinking. It's an interesting question, and I find it interesting because, you know, all of our lives are so very different, and the things that we learn, the things that we pick up, and, you know, our different perspectives. So, what's the biggest life lesson that you've learned so far?
um Honestly, I feel like it's been instilled in me since I was like very young. Just appreciate what you have and stay humble with it. Like I'm not like the type of person where I'm like, oh, I'm an actor, I'm a musician, like I am above you. Because quite honestly, there are people that don't do this and that don't do what I do that have played so much more important roles in like people's lives than me. So like I just appreciate like everything that I have and that I'm able to do. And I think what's great for me is it's like keep keep in mind the little things too. Like I'm like we talked about him like I'm such a huge like superhero fan. Like I'm still like a child at heart. Like I will literally sit down like if I have like a break or I'm not like busy trying to work on things, I will sit down, watch cartoons and eat snacks all day if I could. And so it's like really just stay true to yourself and just stay who you are at all times, basically.
Couldn't agree more, man. And there's hope for the future. If a 19-year-old is saying this, then the future looks bright. Now, as we draw things to a close for today, do you have any upcoming sort of projects or some final thoughts that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Just the song, March 26th, my new song, Cutthroat Insomniac, is coming out. You guys can listen to it anywhere that you listen to music. It's going to be available. Just check it out. It'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Go stream the hell out of it. It's a great track. Now, thank you very much for appearing on the show, Collin. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I wish you the best of the luck with, you know, your acting career, your music, everything. I think the future is very bright for you. And it's been a pleasure learning about you and your life.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
And to everyone listening to the Christian Reeve podcast, I hope this has been another excellent episode for you guys. It has been for me. I hope that you'll leave us a review on maybe Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen to the Christian Reeve podcast. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you would like to see in the future, who you would like to see in the future, and everything in between. Thank you very much for listening. And until next time, peace out. One love. I'll see you in the next one.